game-changing discussions on the big ideas that shape our thinking. This is One-to-One. Previously on One-to-One.
If you look at the 70s and the 80s, the indigenization decree happened. And then advertising fell within the sphere of industries that locals can now own. People found it a lot more convenient to now take the last name of other agencies. They had this thing they call affiliation. So the Saatchis, the Ogilvies of this world, the DDBs all came here. And we just took that. It was the easy way out. When it came to our attorneys, why Extreme has decided to say, we don't want your last name, we don't want your surname, we're Extreme Ideas. We're going to build our own network. And that's why from just one shop in Lagos, we now have presence in about 9 countries, including the United Kingdom.
So let's come back and talk about you. You studied theatre arts at the Ahmadu Bello University. You spent some time at NTA Kaduna.
I did.
I'm interested, actually, in how collectively these influences, your background, how has it all influenced your creative lens and brought you to this point?
Interesting, because when I was studying theatre arts in Ahmadu Bello University, I just realized that I wanted to major in directing, which was what I did, technical theatre and directing. I didn't want to be front-facing at first, especially when it comes to theatre arts. But at the same time, if you had asked me when I was in Navy what I would love to become, I think I'd shaped all my energy towards becoming or taking your job.
I see.
I wanted to be, which one? Television. Okay. I wanted to be on television and be a presenter or stuff like that. And that is why I fought tooth and nail to get a place with NTA Kano. All right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when I got to NTA Kano, I discovered something that presenters looked great on TV, but they struggle to find the money to go.
A very wise man.
Shout out to NTA Kano. But I think that did it for me because I'm the first child. We're 6 in my family. I lost my dad at very early age. We were like bottom of the pyramid kind of family. We struggled a lot. And I just realized that if I'm really going to make headway in life, as glamorous as being a broadcaster looks, maybe I need to change course. And for a while, I struggled because all my life I had programmed my head to be on TV. And then all of a sudden I realized this encumbrance of not being well remunerated for what you would do, at least at the time. And then I had to change course. And then I struggled because I didn't know what next to do,
Yes. So Steve, you've just described what I would consider a truly Nigerian story, a rags to riches story, a story of pioneering and entrepreneurship and human grit. Absolutely. Plenty of blood, toil, sweat, and grit in there. But you've done all of this so that you would be in a position to tell your own story.
Sure.
And by extension, actually help us as Africans tell our own story.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to ask you, how important is it for Africa to tell its own stories? And even before that, what is it that makes a piece of African storytelling truly authentic?
Well, I think it's the underlying word for me would be authenticity. Authentic, all right? Because, I can't tell a Japanese story. I can't tell the story of the Chinese. I can't tell an English story as much as having acquired English as some kind of second language. But the only story I can tell without any equivocation or without my lips trembling in the sort of way of I don't know what I'm saying is the African story.
Absolutely.
I'm here. I'm African. I drank the water from this streams. I ate from the land and everything. So this is a story that actually I know comes from my heart. So and that's why at every point in time it has been able to keep that originality and that authenticity, that tone of voice. We should be able to tell our stories without wanting to give the narrative any kind of foreign accent either.
Absolutely.
Because it is not, the story is not about accent, it's about that originality and that authenticity. And that's why you see, even if you check all of the touch points where our stories have been conveyed to the rest of the world, it's about that originality. So until Nigerians now started to embrace the fact that we love our own, we love our music, we love our artists, nobody was respecting us. Because if you look back in the days of maybe in the 70s or the 80s, in the rise of Afrobeats with the Alex O and all of those things, they were just trying to do something, all right? But it was still about, still heavily influenced by foreign music.
Yes, correct.
Until the young guys came, and then they reversed the process. It was about our language. So even for foreigners now, if you're a musician in Nigeria and you insist on singing in straight-laced English, it's only you and your family that will listen to that kind of song.
Oh, yes.
Because the foreigners are looking for that language, so those words that they can't pronounce, that will make them now research. That is what true Nigerian music is. And the same thing with all of the movies we write. If you decide to do something and you want to copy Denzel Washington, it's your own.
Yeah.
So at the box office today in Nigeria, the local movies are kicking the behinds of blockbusters from America.
Absolutely.
So it is about that originality and that authenticity. That's what makes our story even more interesting for the rest of the world. Yeah.
That's fascinating, Steve. And speaking of crossing the Rubicon, you described yourself as a copywriter at heart. Obviously, you moved on from there, but that is still how you identify yourself along this journey. I'd like to know how that thinking and that, background, that position has shaped your leadership across multiple markets. You are now expanding to South Africa, Lusaka, London, Dubai. You're managing cultures across different markets, but you still are a copywriter at heart. How's that influenced your navigation through?
I'll tell you what, that's a very fascinating question, because even as a copywriter, and I say this to young copywriters all the time, your biggest just to copy the Jersey, your biggest opposition in life is a blank piece of paper. Every time, that's your biggest opposition. So you want to write something, they've given you a brief to say, okay, brand X wants to do this and that and that. So write copy for it. So usually you have that blank piece of paper in your front. Nothing at all, no idea comes to your mind.
Yes.
How to now populate that blank piece of paper with an idea that will transform the market and probably change the world is the biggest thing that you keep chasing all the time. Now, take that same philosophy, take it to entrepreneurship, where you want to start an idea, you don't even know how you're going to start it, but you start to populate that space with little nuggets of ideas here and there and there, and that small seed grows into a huge oak tree with now branches in different countries all over the world. I think that is the inspiration.
Yes.
All the time, that's the inspiration. And the discipline to follow through. And I say this because my dad was in the army. I watched my dad every morning. 6:45. We never had an alarm clock in my house, but every morning, as sure as the sun will rise tomorrow, my dad is up polishing his boots. Clockwork. Goes for his parade, boom, boom, boom. I watched him, I watched that discipline. I think I may have taken a lot of that, I may have soaked that in, and that really drives me. So when I see people saying, slow down, I don't have time to slow down. I'm the son of an army. We keep moving. We don't look back. We just keep marching on.
Wow.
I think that has driven me a lot.
So I'd like to ask you, what in your view do you believe that global audiences get wrong about African creativity? Very important for us to maintain our own sovereignty and tell our own stories.
Sure.
What do you think we get wrong about art?
The language, the nuance, sometimes it passes over their head. And that's why when it comes to global competition, like the Cannes Lions and so many other things, it is important to create diversity in the jury room. So if you have if you have a jury room made up of 20 Europeans and 15 Americans, and then you put a piece of work like a blood sacrifice in front of them,
Who gets it?
they probably don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
Because there's no clue, and no matter how much information you put into your case film that describes the idea and the backstory behind the idea, it still probably will fly over their head. Okay, because again, all of the biases that we already have programmed into our head, knowingly or unknowingly,
Yes.
are going to act as shutter that will not allow you get the idea. So what we try to push now is to tell people there must be more diversity, and that's why shout out to the Can Lions. I see them making spirited effort all the time to create more diversity in the jury room, and I think we need more of those things. So, and again, if you look at Africa, probably represents maybe about 1 or 2% of global GDP. So the tendency is for them, for the global north, to just look at with a little bit of condescension of everything that comes out of Africa, forgetting that Africa owns the future.
Yes.
If you look at population and how it is growing or not growing globally, the Europe and the global north, they are going south. Of course, Africa is the youngest population in the world. So things like even the future of manpower and work may depend on this continent.
Of course.
So the future of creativity, and that's why back in the days when we were all growing up, everybody wanted to be, that Black American culture was what was the hegemonic culture of the world at the time, right? But now, if you don't know Burna Boy, you don't know any of those movie actors, and what do you know? You're lost. So now it's just back to the age, and that's why even with COVID, as much as the global north expected Africa to have been wiped out by now, but because we had more younger people, whereas it looked like that was responsible for us being able to take the virus in our stride and get on moving. For the guys with aging population, unfortunately, didn't quite make it, So I think there's so much opportunity in the ascendancy that African culture and creativity is enjoying at the moment, but the government should not rest on their oars. This is the time for the government to step in, because when Hollywood started, and you see Rambo with one arrow is able to take on all of the Vietnamese army and eradicate them. What were they trying to program into our head? They were trying to program into the head of the world the superiority of the American army.
Absolutely.
Rambo 1.
It wasn't random.
Yeah,
it wasn't random. It was deliberate.
Absolutely.
Now we have this moment. The government needs to come to the table, take all of this proof of concept that young people have provided, build it into major soft power that we can really use to take on the world.
Absolutely. So, Steve, you have just drawn first blood from America.
I saw what you did there. Very brilliant.
Oh boy, interesting. So it really isn't about us customizing our message and creativity for the world. It's advocating for a seat at the table and telling them why they need to listen, because we are the future.
Don't advocate for a seat at the table. Bring your own goddamn table. Because you see, when you start to advocate, you argue whether I should be. No, you come prepared with your own table, drop it in the center circle, and if you like, add a bit of plate of jollof rice to say, look, so good measure, let's sit down. You have to reckon with me and what I have to offer.
Absolutely.
I think that's the stage we're at now.
Absolutely. Bring your own table.
Absolutely.
Spoken like a true leader, and talking about that, you are, of course, vice president.
Yeah.
You still are.
Yeah.
An area director for Africa.
Yeah.
On the International
Advertising
Association Global Board.
Yeah.
What are your biggest priorities for this continent?
Well, I think I just innately a couple of months ago was when I got voted into this very respectful position, and I'm grateful to the IA community for that. Yes. Before me, as Accra, Ghana used to held that position for many years. Yes. So this is the first time a Nigerian will be occupying this position. And my mandate is very clear. My mandate is to spread the Gospel of IA, which is about creativity, about maybe building the marketing community on the continent, to spread it to as many countries as possible. Right now, we're talking to Nairobi, we're talking to Mozambique, we're talking to Ethiopia, just to be able to spread, because right now, you only have IA in Nigeria, in South Africa, and in Ghana.
Yes.
So I want in the first 6 months for us to be able to spread to 3 more other countries, and every 6 months we try and expand that way. There are 54 countries in Africa. There's no shortage of countries that we need to be able to reach. And if anyone in marketing anywhere on the continent gets to see this program, please reach out to me one way or another, and then we can begin to talk about opening an IA chapter in your country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to that point, I'm going to ask you, therefore, what does a functional African creative ecosystem look like in your mind? I'm speaking in terms of studios,
Sure.
IP protection, monetization, policy.
It's about the policy. How can you're talking about policy, you're talking about infrastructure, not just physical infrastructure, but human infrastructure development, digital infrastructure, foundation that needs to be built. I'll give you an example. If you take somewhere like Lekki Phase 1, 20, 25, 30 years ago, nobody wanted to buy anything there because it was probably just marshy and
correct.
bushy. Some people had the vision. They bought land there. If you had 10 plots of land in Lekki Phase 1 now, and you need to sell it at today's market value, imagine what it's going to be.
Correct.
That's the kind of approach we need to take to building digital infrastructure. To say, look, what are the areas? Where is this? We built this economy. The music is moving. The movie is moving. The advertising is moving. Where is it moving to?
Sure.
AI. All of those cutting edge trends. That's going to be the leading technology of tomorrow. Are we investing in them today?
Correct.
Some people took stock in Apple when Apple was £1 for a shilling. Look at how much the stock is worth today. I think that is what the government needs to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So thinking about you, therefore, as a creative, a copywriter at heart, and a business leader, and you're responsible for so much, what would you say that leadership in business, in this industry, has taught you that creativity has not?
Interesting. That's a curveball. I didn't see that coming. But I'll say this. When I was starting my journey as an advertising person, as a copywriter, it used to be the norm in our industry to say, if you and I were to start on the same day, you work in client service department, which is like the client-facing side of our business, and I'm creative, I'm at the back end.
Yeah.
If there's going to be a vacuum in leadership of who is going to run the company in about 10, 15 years' time, the tradition of advertising favors you, regardless of whether you are even suited for that role, regardless of your cerebral capacity, regardless of anything. It's just believed that as a client service, you are able to run a business, and as a creative, you're an idiot. You can't run a business. And those are the kind of stereotypes that I wanted to kick down the hill while we started Extreme. I wanted to demonstrate that the fact that I'm a creative does not make me anywhere inferior when it comes to being able to occupy a leadership position.
Sure.
And we did it. And I think if that is the only thing I'm remembered for after I'm gone, I'll be the happiest person ever, because now I have shown that it is possible to be able to dream, because all of the latitude and the elbow room you have as a creative person to go left field and think outside the box is now coming into entrepreneurship. But mind you, if there's any creative out there listening to what I'm saying now, there's a whole lot of self-development that is also required of you. Because for the first 5-6 years of me running Extreme Ideas, I went to all kinds of Ivy League schools, and I only took leadership courses in leadership and finance management. Right. I was in Howard, in DC. I was in Columbia, in New York. I was in Harvard. I was in I was in all the schools. You know, I was in all the schools. Every year I went there and I need to manage human resources and I need to manage all kinds of material resources, financial resources. How do I do that? And I saw that as a creative, my biggest Achilles heels could be leadership. And I closed that gap real quick. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Steve,
Yeah.
we live in a bold new world, don't we? And we talked earlier about the young new kids on the block.
Yeah.
And we really are living in their world, aren't we?
Sure.
So I'd like to ask you, what surprises you, if anything at all, about the new generation of African creators?
I promise you, the only thing that surprises me is that I'm not surprised by whatever they do, right? And I mean that in the most positive way possible. You know, now you have a generation that exists and they're so bold and so confident. People are going to mistake that confidence for arrogance and cockiness and all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
But they've learned to value themselves a lot. So, I mean, back in the days, in our father's generation, even in my generation, you'll probably keep a job till eternity. These guys will walk out on the job if they think it messes with their mental health, which we tend to like snigger at and just laugh we tend to look at it as if they are softer. They're not. And if you see what these young guys are capable of, right? I think the arrogance of the old needs to get dialed down a little bit because there's so much we can learn from these young guys.
Sure.
You know, because look at back when we were growing up, you had to learn the times table. You had to memorize it. Every information you want, you have to go to the end of the world to get it. They grew up in that. They are digital natives. And the amount of information they have at their fingertip is incredible. So if you compare it to how I probably speak to my children, I'm like, I started my life from the basement, somewhere under the basement, actually. Because of God's mercy, you have the privilege of starting at the third, at least the fourth floor. So if I can achieve the little I've achieved for being under the basement, imagine what you can achieve starting from the third or fourth floor. It's the same thing with this new generation. The amount of things they're capable of achieving because of the access to information, the aid of technology is so incredible. So if I see that from this generation, we find the next Nigerians that are going into other planets or maybe even beat Elon Musk to get to Mars, I will not be surprised.
Absolutely.
Because I think they have so much going for them. All of the other soft issues in terms of behavior, the emotional intelligence, that can always be taught. That can always be taught. But trust me, this is a generation that is going to stand up for itself. They're not going to leave it into your hands or whatever. So
absolutely,
I think shout out to the Gen Z and all of the young.
Correct. And of course, it's important to make the point that Africa is very much a gerontocracy. Is it not? We still have captains. We still have captains of industry, gatekeepers, custodians, and it's very important actually that generation is able to do that. On the other hand, we have unicorns, and there is a certain rite of passage.
Absolutely.
What would you say in terms of approach? What attitude do you feel that the generation that has gone or is going before ought to have towards the new generation, in order to ensure that the baton is indeed handed over in the most effective and responsible manner?
I think it's the attitude is to even that willingness to hand over the baton. It looks like if they can, I'm sure if I'm looking at it from the point of view of the Gen Z, it looks like the older generation wants to take the baton to their grave. And that's what the Gen Z find frustrating. Because if you look at, let's go back to when Yakubu Gowon became the head of state of Nigeria, how old was he?
In his 30s.
He was even single. He was not even married. So now you have a situation in this country where for you to become anything, to become the CEO of a company, you have to have gray hair coming out from your armpit. And these Gen Z people can't stand it. You understand? So the first thing to learn is to know that, look, when to quit the state because You keep underestimating these guys, thinking they don't have anything to offer. But if you were to just give them the chance, you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at what they can do.
Yes.
You know.
Interesting topic of discussion. Absolutely. Very topical.
Absolutely.
But very progressive conversation and indeed. So what we've done effectively is we polarized this conversation. We've talked about the old and we're talking about the new as well. So it's a good point to introduce a point of discussion about legacy.
Yeah.
In that case, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
So Steve, looking back across your entire body of work, and we've touched on some of them already, what piece feels closest to the legacy that you would like to leave by?
I think our expansion for me is just, when you look at the guys, as much as we all like to hate all of the early Europeans that came to Africa to sort of like for the conquest and whatever else that drove them here that made them come here. However, we'd like to really vilify, or there's one thing I always find I isolate, is that bravery. You see, when they came here, I still think what they did was foul.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. But when they came here, they didn't come in some heavy engine boats. They came in rickety boats. There was no Google map. There was no way to even find their way here. There's no assurance that as soon as they step on shore, they were not going to be decimated by some tribal chiefs.
Yeah. Or by malaria.
But they came anyway. They came anyway. And that's why when I see any African taking that same spirit and going to the world, don't wait for them to come and catch us at home this time. Let's take whatever we have to offer out there. And that's why our expansion, for me, is one of those legacy that if that's the only thing I leave, I'll be very happy. And most importantly, the guys leading the charge, it's not even me. Our second biggest operation is in Lusaka, Zambia. We're 7 years old there. We're doing all of the same corporate social responsibility we're doing here. It's led by somebody who started with us as such a young lady, and she's done an extraordinary job just taking us to the rest of the world. And that's what I still say, that give young people the chance to do it. They'll show you what can be done.
Absolutely. The incomparable Steve Babaeko.
Thank you, Tuku.
Thank you.
Joining us. Thank you for having me
on ONE2ONE.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.